Despite Seabiscuit's loss in the big Santa Anita handicap, he and everyone involved with him was inundated with reporters asking questions, taking pictures, and making demands. Seabiscuit had become the Cinderella horse.
Wait a minute. Are we going fairy tale here? What's coming next? He's going to get his glass horseshoes?
Well, he never got glass horseshoes, but his horseshoes were very valuable.
Souvenirs?
Ashtrays.
Ooh. What a souvenir, an ashtray. Hello, I'm Charles.
And I'm James.
We love history, and we want to share our love of history with you.
And today we are continuing our series on Seabiscuit, so bring her in.
Are you sure you two can't scooch any further?
No.
Oh well.
We're right into the layout.
And the library.
It's both.
Whatever.
It's Studio T!
Anyway, let's continue on with our series on Seabiscuit and War Admiral.
If you remember from the last Seabiscuit video, Tom was kind of secretive about Seabiscuit's training.
Keep it secret. Keep it safe.
Tom would take Seabiscuit out for slow, easy workouts in the morning when reporters and railbirds were around.
Wait a minute, what's a railbird? With me as a train lover, what is that? Birds that like to run on the rails?
No, railbirds in that time were professional gamblers who would be out on the track timing the horses' workouts so they had an idea who to bet on. And then they would also report all of this, and the racing officials would hear it, and that would affect weights and a whole bunch of different stuff, some of which we'll get into later.
Okay, good to know.
In the afternoon, Tom would give Seabiscuit a real workout when the railbirds and the reporters were all watching the races. So these private workouts not only helped keep Seabiscuit's superb abilities from the racing track secretaries who assigned the weights for the races, but it also helped keep the prone to weight gain Seabiscuit. Remember, he's kind of a glutton with a sweet tooth. It helped keep Seabiscuit from gaining weight and keeping him in racing form. On afternoon workout days, Tom would make Seabiscuit think he was going to race by doing everything the way that would be done on a race day. So Seabiscuit would get all keyed up. He wouldn't eat as much, and he'd be fretting and thinking about that race. The private workouts also started and fueled many crazy rumors about Seabiscuit. One reporter even claimed that Tom gave Seabiscuit 2 bottles of beer every day. This was not true, by the way. Also, rumors of Seabiscuit not being in good shape or he was crippled also circulated. In a way, these ones are kind of understandable because he was not a looker, he had bad legs. You could obviously tell that. Anybody who was in the horse industry would probably be able to look at him and say, that does not look good. They still weren't really entirely true, though.
Seabiscuit's next race was on March 6th, the San Juan Capistrano. At the bell, Seabiscuit sprung to the front, but let another horse, Special Agent, overtake him, and Red settled Seabiscuit a couple lengths behind, keeping his speed reserve in place. Turning into the home stretch, Red let Seabiscuit go, and they ate up the distance to the lead and won by 7 lengths. The crowd started calling, "Bring on Rosemont!" This was the horse that had beaten Seabiscuit in the Santa Anita, if you'll remember. This rematch would have to wait. Seabiscuit ran in the March Back Handicap and the Bay Meadows Handicap and won both. He was the pride of the West, but the prestigious East didn't take him so seriously. So off to the East Coast the Seabiscuit crew went. In the east were several horses that Seabiscuit's crew wanted him to race against, including Rosemont from Santa Anita, Aneroid, who was in the top ranks of Eastern handicaps, and the illustrious 1937 Triple Crown winner, War Admiral.
The war on the Great Eastern Racehorses began with an attack at the Brooklyn Handicap on June 26th. Seabiscuit ran against both Rosemont and Aneroid. Even if most people did not think much of Seabiscuit's Western accomplishments, the New York handicappers were only half skeptical. They gave Rosemont, whom they considered superior, 127 pounds of weight. And Seabiscuit and Aneroid both carried 122 pounds. Both Seabiscuit and Aneroid ran away from Rosemont, but Seabiscuit gained the victory by a nose. Wait a minute. What exactly is handicapping? Are we talking about wheelchairs here?
No, we are not talking about wheelchairs. Handicapping is a way of trying to make the race as even as possible. A horse that is known for being a winner will carry more weight than a horse that has not won as much. So theoretically, 2 to 3 pounds is supposed to slow a horse down a length in a 1.25 mile race. They're just trying to make it as even a race as possible, because if you just know, like, yeah, horses B through H, there's no way they're going to win. So what's the point of racing? Well, let's try and make it a good show.
In other words, they're going for the ratings.
Kind of. Make the race look good. Make sense?
They want excitement. Pizzazz!
The closer it is, the better. Are we good?
Yep, we're good. In the next battle, aka race, the Butler Handicap only had 5 horses who attempted the race besides Seabiscuit. The handicappers gave Seabiscuit 7 pounds more weight than the next closest weight and 24 pounds more than the horse that they thought had the least chance of beating Seabiscuit. Seabiscuit won. Next, in the Massachusetts Handicap, he beat the filly Fair Nitus, who carried 108 pounds, to Seabiscuit's 130 pounds by 2 lengths, and beat the track record by 2/5 of a second. Howard was understandably very impressed with the filly's performance, and bought her with the intention of breeding her to Seabiscuit when their racing days were over.
Everyone was thinking the same thing. The little outcast grandson of men of war needed to meet and race against the greatest son of man of war, War Admiral. Attempts were made for them to meet that year, but they all fell through. Tom figured they'd have to hunt the Admiral down.
Rabbit season, duck season. Rabbit season, duck season. Rabbit season, duck season. Uh-oh.
However, from then on, racing Seabiscuit would have other challenges. Racing officials would start giving Seabiscuit much more weight than other horses due to his amazing performances. They needed to pick the races that gave Seabiscuit the most favorable terms. Many horses who tried racing with heavy weight often lost repeatedly. Howard insisted on a limit of 130 pounds. This was the highest weight that could be assigned at the Santa Anita Handicap, because they wanted to go back and try that race again. If Seabiscuit won that race, they might accept higher weights. Unfortunately, Howard was criticized a lot for this decision of putting a limit of weight on Seabiscuit. They said he was being a coward for not testing his horse. Because of this, when it came down to choosing a race between two races that were being run on the same day, he chose the Narragansett Special, which gave Seabiscuit 132 pounds. It turned out to be a bad choice, because on the day of the race, the track was extremely muddy and slippery due to torrential rain. Seabiscuit, who hated running in mud, came in third, breaking his winning streak. The other race which Seabiscuit could have run in had a dry track that day, so it was a really bad mistake.
War Admiral was training in Maryland, so the Seabiscuit crew went there with the hopes of racing the two horses in the same race. There were 3 races, both horses were entered in. A match seemed likely, and it was ready to happen. Before these races, Seabiscuit ran the Laurel Handicap on October 16th. Something special happened in the saddling ring before the race. Tom usually brushed off reporters and admirers who wanted to get near Seabiscuit. But on that day, a man approached Tom and asked to have the honor of holding Seabiscuit while Tom saddled him for the race. This man was none other than Sonny Jim Fitzsimmons, the man who had lost Seabiscuit. He would later say it was the greatest moment of his life. Oh, and by the way, Seabiscuit won that race too. On the morning of the Washington Handicap, both Seabiscuit and War Admiral were set to run, until rain drenched the track in mud. Seabiscuit was scratched so as to not risk injury in the sticky mud. War Admiral did run, and won. He tried again at the Pimlico Special, but Seabiscuit again had to be scratched due to the poor track conditions. During the race, Tom was watching War Admiral when he briefly ran alongside another horse, Mass General. Mass General looked War Admiral in the eye, and War Admiral hesitated. He quickly pulled himself together and raced on ahead to win, but Tom believed he had discovered a way of beating the Triple Crown champion. Next chance was the Riggs Handicap, but due to an incident with someone at the Pimlico track, War Admiral's owner, Samuel Riddle, withdrew his horse from the race and had his trainer, Conway, shelve the colt for the rest of the season. A chance for a meeting in 1937 was gone. Seabiscuit did run in the Riggs and absolutely annihilated this competition. His final race before going back west was the Bowie Handicap, which he lost by a nose. Tom hadn't wanted to send Seabiscuit out in the 1 5/16 mile race, but Howard had been talked into it. Seabiscuit was then shipped west.
After returning to California while riding a different Howard horse, Red was suspended from riding in any race in California for the rest of 1937 due to rough riding interference. This left the Seabiscuit crew very upset, as this was more than racing officials usually did. Usually they would just do a week or just for that particular track, but this was all over California that he was suspended for. Red was like family to the Howards, so it felt to them like a personal slight. Also, no other jockey had successfully ridden Seabiscuit, so putting another jockey on Seabiscuit wasn't something Howard wanted to do. There had been talk about War Admiral coming west for the Santa Anita Handicap, but it didn't happen, and War Admiral didn't come west. Because of this, Howard stated, "No Pollard, no Seabiscuit." Howard scratched all the horses that Red was going to ride during the rest of that year, but hoped to be able to run Seabiscuit in the Christmas Day Handicap, hoping they could get the suspension lifted. Red didn't want Seabiscuit to miss important prep races and suggested George Wolfe for an alternate jockey. Howard refused and scratched Seabiscuit from the Christmas race when Red's suspension was not lifted. So, they next tried the New Year's Handicap, But this was still problematic because a racehorse's competitive spirit is only really honed during actual racing, which Seabiscuit had now not done for quite a while. They had to hope that he still had that razor-edge competitive spirit necessary for good racing when Seabiscuit finally was able to race again.
New Year's Day approached. Howard was again insisting that Seabiscuit carry no more than 130 pounds of weight in any prep race for the big Santa Anita Handicap. Racing handicappers knew that Seabiscuit drew big crowds to the racetrack, but also wanted to try and make sure that any of the other horses had at least a semblance of a chance against the little runt. They gave Seabiscuit 132 pounds for the New Year's handicap. Seabiscuit needed to race as he was gaining weight and going stall crazy. Instead of stir crazy, it's stall crazy. Or he's got cabin fever. But Howard scratched him from the race. They next tried for the San Pascal handicap, but he was again given 132 pounds. No go! Only 2 races remained before the big one. The San Carlos and the San Antonio. Seabiscuit was given 132 pounds for the San Carlos, and the track was a swampy mess from a lot of rain. Seabiscuit was scratched. But his stablemate and former antagonist, Fairnightus, was entered. Since Seabiscuit wasn't racing, Red rode Fairnightus instead. Tragedy struck, as during the race, another horse named He Did took a misstep and lost his momentum. Fairnightus, who was just behind He Did, came right up behind him. Red didn't have time to react, and their hooves connected. Fairnightus stumbled, fell, and rolled over Red. Miraculously, he survived and was taken to a hospital where the doctor said there was little chance that he would ride again that year.
With Red unable to ride, who would ride Seabiscuit in the big race? Red insisted that Seabiscuit should not be scratched for the big race. Tom and Red wanted George Wolfe, but Howard wanted Sonny Workman. Howard had the last say, so Workman was put up on Seabiscuit for the San Antonio handicap. Tom worked with him on the track, and Red worked with him from his hospital bed, telling the jockey everything he could to help him in his ride with Seabiscuit. Thankfully, racing officials finally relented and gave Seabiscuit 130 pounds. Workman had trouble with Seabiscuit as he was working up, and the jockey couldn't settle him. They got off to a poor start, coming out of the gate late, and were bumped by a straggling horse on the outside. Workman got blocked behind the leaders and trailed in the home stretch. Seabiscuit took over for the jockey and drove for the lead, but the extra weight he carried compared to the lead horse, Aneroid, was just too much, and Aneroid beat Seabiscuit by a nose at the wire. Tom was mad at the ride Workman had done. Howard wanted Workman to ride Seabiscuit in the big race, but Tom had his say, and George Wolfe was put up on Seabiscuit for the race.
George Wolfe was one of the top jockeys of his time. He was riding from a very early age and supposedly spent more of his youth on a horse than he did on foot. He knew horses and could figure out a horse's mind. He could also figure out fifths of a second in his head, and it was said he won every prize that wasn't nailed down. He was fearless and demonstrated such a cool, unflappable head in the saddle that he earned the name the Iceman. In a time when rough riding wasn't as closely regulated as it is today, Wolfe was a stickler for clean riding and would go after jockeys who weren't riding cleanly. With his skill and ability to learn a horse, he was probably the best thing that could have happened to Seabiscuit with Red out of action. Seabiscuit was watched like a hawk as the big race drew near. Plots to keep Seabiscuit from winning were discovered and thwarted. Wolf was even warned about a potential kidnapping attempt to keep him from riding Seabiscuit in the big race. Nevertheless, the big day finally arrived. All the top horses, minus War Admiral, were there, ready to run. With Red watching Seabiscuit from the stands, Seabiscuit broke from the gate to be immediately knocked into and almost went down. Once free, Seabiscuit went after the leaders. He ran top speed the entire race. He made it to the lead, but another horse, Stagehand, came even with Seabiscuit near the end of the race, and they went under the wire together. The photo was indistinct and not very clear, but Stagehand was named the winner. Seabiscuit lost the big race for the second time.
After this narrow loss, Seabiscuit came back to win the Agua Caliente handicap. I hope I pronounced that right after about 6 tries. And then he went to win the Bay Meadows handicap, and thoughts were once again discussed of a match race with War Admiral. Heading back east, they hoped to meet up with the Admiral. Red defied what the doctor said about not being in the saddle for a year, and was back in the saddle, and a match was proposed for. Publicity photos were taken. Seabiscuit was calm and collected, posing for the cameras, while War Admiral was fractious and tossed off his saddle several times. Both horses were small, but that was where the similarity ended. War Admiral was the taller of the two, but Seabiscuit was heavier, probably due to his sweet tooth. War Admiral was also a lot nicer looking of the two. The race ended up being cancelled to Seabiscuit's knees getting swelled up. However, through Tom's careful care, this was quickly healed up. Then, fresh off his previous accident, Red suffered another accident in even worse this time, shattering his leg. The doctor said if Red was able to walk again, he'd be doing good and he would consider himself lucky. Wolf was put back up on Seabiscuit. However, as skilled as Wolf was, he wasn't able to detect the smallest and earliest signs of strain on Seabiscuit's legs. At the Massachusetts handicap, both horses were preparing to try for a match race again. But Seabiscuit's injuries from too much work as a 2-year-old flared up again, and Howard had to scratch him again. As if he had raced, Seabiscuit not only would have lost, he probably would have been crippled. The veterinarians said that Seabiscuit would never race again, just like his jockey Red. However, Tom believed that with proper care, Seabiscuit could race again. And Tom was right.
He ran at Arlington Park in the mud and came in second. Then was shipped back to California for the Hollywood Gold Cup and won. He ran a match race with a horse by the name of Ligarati, sounds Italian, who was owned by Bing Crosby and Howard's son. Seabiscuit almost lost due to interference from Ligarati's jockey. Both jockeys were suspended after the race, but after private footage of the race was watched, Ligarati's jockey was proved to be at fault, and since there was no betting on the race, they gave both jockeys a slap on the wrist and lifted the suspensions. Back east they went. Time was running out for the match race with War Admiral. Finally, a match race was set for November 1st 1938, with both horses carrying the same weight and no starting gate.
So, this is the end for part 2 of our story on Seabiscuit. On November 1st, we will be uploading the match race, where War Admiral and Seabiscuit, where their stories finally completely converge into one story. And they race in one of the greatest races in racehorsing history.
It's definitely top. May not be the greatest, but it's definitely top. At absolute minimum, it has got to be top 10.
So stay tuned until we upload the next part. So if you want to be alerted immediately after we upload that, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so that you can receive all notifications.
And don't forget to like this video so that more people can enjoy it. And so, until our next adventure, see you later.